Good evening. Today we're going to be doing a tune that is inspired by one of the greatest dance producers of all time. It's not me. Guys, thank you though. No, stop now, seriously. It's Skrillex. Let's get into it.
So they think I wanna die, yeah, cause my dose is suicide, yeah, bet my coffin would be nice, yeah, stay that bitch up with some ice,
There we have it. Let's run it from the top.
Said I hope you got my no bitch, and I left it on the suicide dope bitch, yeah, and you left it on the floor bitch, ain't ruin number one, never trust no bitch, get this green and smoke this green, gotta stay potent, pussy nigga talking shit but he ain't no shit, chicken little ass nigga man you boneless, yeah, I keep my ratchet boy you Polish, way, throwing bands tonight, shawty's throwing bands tonight, throwing bands tonight, so they think I wanna die, yeah, cause my dose is suicide, yeah, bet my coffin would be nice, yeah, stay that bitch up with some ice,
Lovely, right, let's get into it. So to start off, Skrillex uses a lot of organic sound. I was using way back with Trippie Redd and Pink Pantheress for the reference for this tune. And he uses a lot of organic sounds in there. So just like little bits of soundscapes and Foley things. And musicality, like in the verses before the drop comes in, are very organic sounding. So we've tried to replicate a similar thing here. So in this little intro, we've got a lot of Foley and organic sounds. So nothing is totally sort of on grid. Everything is a little bit all over the place. And it just gives it that sort of super natural sound to it. So there we're mixing the two worlds of the sort of hyper digital sounding noise sweeps with those organic Foley sounds. And then with our synths in the intro. We start off with these chords and we're in C sharp minor. So our chords start off on the A, go up to the B and then back down to the A, back up to the B. So we're going from the 6 to the 7 to the 6 to the 7. And just to make it a little bit more interesting, instead of having this note up here as we did in the first chord, we've just taken that down. So the chord is still being played, but the top note is just a little bit different. And then I've used this transform function on the MIDI to make it give a little strum. So they're not all in line like this. Use that and it gives it that little strum, so it sounds much more organic. And then I've just added these weird little synth loops that I found, just cut them up a bit. Got a little bit of a vocal timbre to it, so it's a very Skrillexy kind of vibe.
Said I hope you got my no bitch, and I left it on the suicide dope bitch, yeah, and you left it on the floor bitch, ain't ruin number one, never trust no bitch.
And then we're continuing with the nice juxtaposition that Skrillex uses. We're having some very digital sounding effects going on. So we've got this little spin back and then this little perk fill. So generally he uses pretty interesting sounds, so they're not typical drum sounds. So this one is a really weird sound, but it is acting effectively as a perk.
I never trust no bitch. Get this green and smoke this green, gotta stay potent. Pussy nigga talk talking shit, but he ain't no shit. Chicken noodle.
And then we're just using this trumpet to just do a few little hits to add to the top layer melodically when this bass is happening.
Get this green and smoke this green, gotta stay potent. Pussy nigga talking shit, but he ain't no shit.
So this bass, we are playing the A to the B, the same as we did in the intro. So the 6 to the 7, and then we're going up to the 1 this time. So we're going up to the C sharp. And then we've got these little E's just peppered about a little bit just to help the rhythm a little bit and to make the melody a little bit more interesting. So the sound design on this is pretty simple. There's a few ways that I felt like you could go about making this kind of sound. So I've done it two different ways. So in the verse, we've got one sound, and in the drop, we've done it slightly differently, but they're fairly similar. But I just wanted to show you two different ways of doing this kind of sound design. So in this one, in the verse, we've got 2 square waves, and this is our envelope. And our first oscillator is down 3 octaves. Our second oscillator is down 2 octaves and up 7 semitones. So it's sort of like an M1 kind of vibe. So if we just listen to that top oscillator, and then our first together. Very subtle, but it adds just a nice little layer of harmony with that +7, and then we've got a sub in there as well. And then the thing that's doing a lot of the work here are the effects. So if we take these effects off, you can hear it's a pretty basic sounding couple of square waves, and then we add this filter, so we've got this little notch. So we're only letting a little bit of that frequency spectrum through. And then again, the distortion does so much of the work. And with the distortion, and as usual, I'll put it on a tube, and the drive and mix are at 100%. And then we've just got some basic EQ, a little bit of hyperdimension, some reverb, and a flanger.
Get this green and smoke this green, gotta stay potent. Pussy nigga talking shit, but he ain't no shit. Chicken noodle ass nigga, man, you boneless. Yeah, I keep my ratchet, boy, you're Poland.
And then for the drums, we've just got a snare. And then this very Skrillexy sounding sort of hat top loop. Very trashy, really high end. That is very Skrillexy sounding to me. And then for the verse, we've just used this trap hat. So we've got the vibe of drum and bass, but it's still got that kind of trap element that Skrillex tends to use a lot.
Chicken noodle ass nigga, man, you boneless. Yeah, I keep my ratchet, boy, you're Polish. Way, throwing bands tonight, shawty throwing bands tonight.
And then as we go into this build, we go back to the chord progression that we had in the intro. So we go back to this A to the B to the A to the B. And I recommend this a lot in pre-choruses especially. Going from one note to your second note and then coming back to the first note again. So the chord progression is sort of a 1, 2, 1. When your chord on the 1 and the 3 are the same, it creates a nice bit of tension because you don't get that sort of 4 chord resolution. So it's a nice way to build into something like a chorus or a drop. A really nice little technique I would recommend. And then to create some more organic feel to it, I've added this little flute that I've just cut up. And then with the drums, we've just got some like fairly basic build up. We've got a build clap, a shaker, a kick build in there. And then, as usual, a little bit of silence in the gap. So it's only the vocals playing in this little bit. And then the drop hits harder because you go from the track being silent to everything kicking in after that.
So they think I wanna die, yeah, cause my dose is suicide, yeah, but my coffin would be nice.
So we are playing the same MIDI as we had in our verse. This time I've changed up the sound just a little bit. Still a similar sound, but very slightly different. So this time we are using 2 sine waves, one 2 octaves down, one 1 octave down, and we're just using this PD from B. So oscillator B is modulating oscillator A, and then we're using this envelope here to affect that parameter. And then as usual, I've used this LFO1 to affect a lot of the parameters within Serum. So we've got this pitch envelope on both of these here are being affected by LFO2. So that gives it the sort of click at the start, gives it a nice attack. And then we've just got a bit of hyperdimension and a bit of reverb, and that is it. And then with them, and then under there we've got a sub. So I've taken the lows out of this main bass, so we're not getting any sub information there, and this sub is doing all of the lows. So it's just a sine wave, 3 octaves down, and we've just got a bit of compression on there. And to keep the energy going, I've elongated these notes in comparison to this main bass here. So the bass is working as plucks, and then this sub is carrying on for longer than those plucks are. And in the reference that I used, Skrillex was doing this same thing. The sub didn't follow the envelope of the pluck bass. It sort of carried on as these elongated notes. So it gives it much more energy.
Yeah, 'cause my dose is suicide. Yeah, bet my coffin would be nice.
And then with the drums, we've got this same snare in. And then I've just added this little tonal snare on top of that. Very typical Skrillexy thing to do. And what I've done is on this tonal snare, I've taken out the transient. So we've taken the initial flag away from the start of that snare, and then we've added a little fade in. So you don't get 2 transients stacked on top of each other, because this snare that we've got already has a very strong transient, and you don't really want 2 transients being stacked upon each other, because the transient gets too loud if you're stacking 2 on top. So if we look at the waveform before and after we take that transient out, so that's before and then after. Before, after. You can see it's much quieter because you're not getting 2 of those transients stacked on each other. And it means that when you're clipping the bus, as we've done here, and eventually limiting your master, it means that they're both not working so hard because you haven't got such massive peaks in your transient. So the clipping and the limiting doesn't have to work so hard. And it means eventually you can get the song much louder if you don't have these real standout peaks with those transients. So on top of that, we've just got a little drum and bass hat. And then our kick. And then we come to our post, and the first thing that comes in is this little wob. And the reason it's in this effects group rather than the bass group is because I didn't want the sidechain in the bass group to be affected. So this sort of stands alone, separate from the basses. So this is just, I've done it in Serum 1. Interesting. So this is just a saw wave and a triangle wave. Saw wave is at 0 octaves. Triangle wave is +3 octaves and +7 semitones, similar to what we did in the intro. And then we've got a sub in there as well. And as I've done in previous videos, we've got LFO1, which is creating the shape. So this LFO1 is affecting as many parameters as I felt like sounded good. So it's doing this noise level just a tiny bit, the level of our first oscillator and the filter as well. And then we go to the effects, and the LFO is affecting a lot of these parameters here. So the frequency of this EQ changes a bit, just opens up when that's being played. Chorus as well, the drive of the distortion, and then these filter parameters here. And then we've got a delay and a bit of reverb on there as well. And I've taken all of the lows out so it's not interfering with those basses. And then we come to this little trumpet. So this was the original loop that I found. So I chose that because of the timbre of the sound. I thought it sounded really good. So I've just cut that up into a different melody. And then we've added a few bits of processing. So without any processing. And then I've just added this distortion rack. So it really crunches it up. And then we've added this sort of dub delay. So it sounds a little bit sort of reggae kind of vibe, which Skrillex uses quite a lot. and it's got a really long feedback on it, so it creates a really nice ambience for the whole of this part of the track. And with the melody, we've got two parts of the melody. We've got this A section here and then this B section here. Similar in terms of the rhythm, but the notes ever so slightly changed. So this back end of part A and the back end of part B are exactly the same. It's just the front end of the notes changed slightly. So if we had part A happening again and again, it would sound a little bit boring. So this is what it sounded like if it was all the same. Gets a little bit monotonous, so some of these notes I've just changed a little bit, so I think I've taken them down by one semitone. So it makes it much more interesting. And then to go into this second section, we've just got this little fill. I've just done a little bit of EQ here and an auto pan just to fling it left and right just a tiny bit. And then I have this smack attack, which is a transient shaper. So we've just taken some of the attack out of it. So the transients are less intense because I felt like it was sticking out a little bit too much. So if we have those transients in there and then without, very subtle, but it just helps smooth over that transition, I felt, a little bit. And then we've just added these weird little synth bits just in that second half just to add a little bit more interest. So we've got a difference between this A section of the drop and the B section. So it just adds a little bit of ear candy. And that's the same sample that I used in the intro as well. There we have it. One of the absolute goats of producing on the planet. And as we've had a new Skrillex album, I felt like I needed to do a song in his honour. So I do hope it's helped. Thank you very much for watching, and love to your mothers.